The new wife, Vanessa, was a portrait of neglect, sprawled across the $1 million sofa, dead drunk. The air stank of stale liquor. Just a few feet away, on the cold marble floor, sat little Emily. Her dress was stained. She was frantically scooping up congealed scraps from the party, scraps dropped by guests, scraps left to go cold. The 8-year-old girl with Down syndrome rocked back and forth, muttering, "Eat fast, Emily. Eat fast before the food runs away." She was so hungry she didn't even hear the sound of the car in the driveway. She didn't hear the key in the lock. But in that precise instant, the heavy oak door flew open. Arthur Blackwood, her millionaire father, was home. He had returned 2 days early from his aerospace summit in Europe, a Pikachu toy clutched in his hand for his daughter. But the man who controlled boardrooms and built empires froze on his own doorstep. What he saw in that moment, and the cold, silent vow he made next, would bring the entire household to its knees. What city are you watching this video from, and what time is it? By the way, if you're enjoying my videos, I'd be so happy if you could subscribe to my channel and like this video. The black car service slid silently away from the international airport, wheels gliding over the rain-slicked asphalt toward the wealthy suburbs of Seattle. Inside, Arthur Blackwood leaned against the leather, his gaze lost in the passing city lights. In his hand, he clutched a small gift, a bright yellow Pikachu plush he'd bought at the airport. At 42, Arthur was a titan in the aerospace industry. People knew him as a brilliant, driven entrepreneur, but few understood the hollow ache behind the success. 3 years ago, he had lost his first wife, Sarah, after a brutal fight with leukemia. Her death had extinguished the light in their home. On her hospital bed, her last words had been a whisper. "Please, Arthur, love our Emily for me. She's special. She deserves to be a princess." It was a vow he feared he was failing. A year after Sarah's death, vulnerable and lonely, Arthur met Vanessa. She was 30, beautiful, and seemed so understanding. He saw her as a new anchor, someone who could help him care for Emily, to fill the void of a mother's love. They married quickly. To the outside world, Vanessa was the model wife, attentive, gracious, and kind, especially in Arthur's presence. He wanted to believe it. He told himself he was lucky to have a woman who cared for Emily every time his work pulled him away, which was often. This afternoon, after 2 weeks in Europe, he was home early. He hadn't told anyone, hoping to surprise his wife and daughter. He pictured Emily's shriek of joy at the new Pikachu, her small arms wrapping around his neck. He even imagined Vanessa's gentle smile. The car stopped at the high iron gates. The driver opened the door. Arthur stepped out, breathing in the cool, damp air. A strange unease settled on him. The massive front door opened. The sharp stench of alcohol hit him instantly. The house was heavy, silent, and wrong. The long hallway was dark, the silence broken only by the sound of glass shattering somewhere inside. Arthur frowned, walking faster. "Emily, where are you?" His voice echoed. No answer. He moved through the empty dining room, where empty bottles and glasses littered the floor. He approached the main living room, and that's when his heart stopped. Emily was on the floor. Her white dress was stained with grease, her hair matted, her face dirty. She was using her bare hands to pick up leftover food, stuffing it into her mouth like she hadn't eaten in days. When she saw him, her bright, innocent eyes lit up. "Daddy, I have to eat fast!" "Before the food runs away." Arthur froze. The simple, naive sentence cut him like a knife. His knees buckled. He ran to his daughter, his arms trembling as he pulled her into a hug. "Emily, my little girl." His voice broke. Emily, still chewing a greasy piece of chicken, held it up to him. "Daddy, eat with me." Arthur bit his lip, tears blurring his vision. He had let his daughter live in misery without even knowing. Then, his gaze drifted to the sofa. Vanessa. She was there, still in a glamorous red dress, makeup smeared, hair a mess, a bottle beside her. She was completely drunk, muttering cruel words. Useless. "Just a waste of food. You should just disappear." Arthur shot to his feet. Rage, hot and volcanic, erupted in his chest. His voice thundered. "Shut up! Get up right now and apologize to this child." Vanessa's eyes struggled open. She looked at him, sneered and slurred. Apologize? What do you know about this house? You're never even here. Arthur scooped Emily into his arms, holding her tight. His eyes burned. When you are sober, he said, each word hitting like a hammer. I expect an explanation for this. Emily hid her face in his shoulder, clutching the Pikachu. For a moment, Arthur felt his world collapse, but deep inside, a new cold fire had just been lit. Vanessa closed her eyes, pretending to sink back into her stupor. But the corner of her mouth twitched with a flash of malice. Arthur spent the night in his daughter's room. The small room was quiet, filled only by Emily's soft breathing. She slept restlessly, her face still smudged, her hands clutching the new toy. He sat on the edge of her bed, waves of guilt washing over him. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Emily's words. I have to eat fast. And Vanessa's cruel, useless. He thought he had made the right decision, marrying again. He thought Emily would be cared for. That trust was now shattering. Morning came. Arthur brought Emily downstairs, wanting the family to sit for breakfast, as if to force a new beginning. The dining room was tidy. Vanessa was already there, hair perfect, makeup carefully applied, wearing a silk blouse. She was the model wife again, pouring coffee, arranging bacon. But Arthur couldn't erase the image from last night. Emily was seated next to her father. In front of her was a single, dry, hard slice of bread on a separate plate. Arthur looked at the table, laden with food, but nothing prepared for his daughter. He forced a smile, took some fruit, and put it on her plate. Emily kept her head down, slowly biting the cold bread. He asked quietly, You don't want to eat? Emily looked at her father, then whispered, I'm waiting for the leftovers. Mommy said I have to wait. Arthur went still. Vanessa, hearing this, immediately put down her coffee cup with a sweet smile. You must have misheard, honey. Emily just likes simple food, don't you see? I take care of her every little need. Arthur didn't reply. He just looked at his daughter's trembling hands on the dry bread. He looked at Vanessa. Do you remember what you said last night? She paused, then laughed lightly. Don't take my drunken words seriously, darling. I was exhausted, probably talking nonsense. How can you doubt me like that? He said nothing, just stared at her. That sweetness now seemed suffocatingly false. Just then, someone entered the room. It was Mrs. Rosa, the family's longtime housekeeper. She was in her 60s, hair silver, a thin but agile figure. Arthur remembered her from the days Sarah was still alive. She placed a pitcher of water on the table, bowed to Arthur, and smiled kindly at Emily. Good morning, little princess. Emily looked up, crumbs on her lips, and smiled. But her eyes immediately dropped when she caught Vanessa's sharp, silencing glare. Arthur saw it. His stomach twisted. He pushed the fruit plate toward Emily. Go ahead, eat. You don't have to wait for anything. Emily hesitated, her eyes flickering to Vanessa. Vanessa jumped in. Don't pressure her. The child has a sensitive stomach. I know better than anyone. Arthur gripped his fork, but he didn't argue. He knew he needed proof. The breakfast continued in a heavy silence. When Arthur finally stood up, Emily ran after him, pulling his sleeve. Daddy, I ate well. My tummy isn't roaring anymore. He bent down and kissed her forehead. He headed for the door, but Mrs. Rosa followed him. She approached him, her voice trembling. The little one shouldn't have to endure this, sir. Arthur stopped. Rosa's eyes were full of worry, but she said no more, afraid of retaliation. He understood. He nodded slightly. As he passed the kitchen, Arthur saw something that froze his blood. In a corner, on a low shelf, was a plastic plate with cold scraps, chicken bones, bread crusts, and wilted salad. It was a portion set aside like one for a dog. He stared at it. Emily's words echoed, I'm waiting for the leftovers. His hand clenched into a fist. Upstairs, Vanessa was on the phone, laughing and talking. Arthur looked up, his eyes burning. He knew one thing for certain. He had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. Arthur left the kitchen, his heart heavy with determination. He put on his suit jacket, giving Vanessa the impression he was leaving for the office. "Leaving so early again?" She smiled. "I thought you were taking the day off." "I have a few things to take care of," he said, his voice flat. But instead of going to the office, Arthur drove around the block and parked near the park. He couldn't leave. He had to know what happened when he wasn't there. That afternoon, he slipped back into the mansion. Loud music was already playing. Vanessa, who had seemed so sweet that morning, was throwing a party. He didn't go in the front. He slipped around the back, finding a spot where he could watch the living room through the slightly open glass door. The room was festive. Wine flowed, music thumped, and laughter filled the air. Vanessa was the center of attention in a tight black dress. Seated next to her was Kyle, her younger brother. He was 28, thin, wearing a cheap suit, with shifty eyes and the arrogant smirk of someone used to living off others. Across from him sat Monica, Vanessa's best friend. Her blonde hair, bright red dress, and loud voice marked her as a professional partier. Arthur watched. The music stopped as a small figure appeared on the stairs. Emily. She wore a faded cotton dress, clutching her Pikachu. She looked at the strangers, her small legs moving slowly, wanting to approach but too afraid. Monica turned. Her eyes landed on the small girl. She burst out laughing. "My God!" she shrieked. "The girl looks like a broken doll." The guests laughed. Kyle slapped his thigh. "That's right, just a useless shadow. If it weren't for my brother-in-law, she wouldn't even have a place to sit." The room roared with mockery. Emily froze on the stairs. Her face trembled. She clutched Pikachu tighter, turned, and fled from the lights and laughter. Arthur stood in the shadows, his fists so tight his nails dug into his skin. He wanted to storm in and smash the man who had insulted his daughter, but he held back. He needed to see more. He followed Emily's small, hurried steps. She stopped in the dark hallway, curling up on the tile floor, whispering to her Pikachu. "Mommy said I have to be good. Eating last makes me a good girl." Arthur listened, his chest tightening. His daughter still believed her stepmother's lies. Just then, Mrs. Rosa appeared with a glass of water. "Drink some water, dear. You'll feel better." Emily looked up, her eyes bright. She reached for the glass, but a harsh voice interrupted. Kyle stood there, wine glass in hand. "Mind your own business, old woman. Don't meddle." Mrs. Rosa froze. Emily shuddered, pulled her hand back, and hugged Pikachu. Arthur watched from the shadows, his blood boiling. He had to force himself to stay hidden. If he exploded now, Vanessa would just cover everything up with her charm and deceit. He needed undeniable proof. He slipped back to the living room. Vanessa was laughing with Monica, but as her gaze drifted to the hallway where Emily was curled up, her smile vanished. In an instant, her kind face turned into a cold, resentful glare, sharp as a knife. Arthur held his breath. That look was the proof. The woman he trusted wore two faces. He backed away into the shadows, his hand trembling. He made a silent vow. "I must wait. I must see everything clearly before I act." When the party ended and the guests left, Arthur found Mrs. Rosa cleaning in the kitchen. "Rosa," he said, his voice firm, "tell me the truth. What has been happening to my daughter?" Mrs. Rosa's lips trembled. Fear and sadness warred in her eyes. Finally, she broke down. "Sir, I'm sorry I kept silent," she whispered, tears streaming. "The little one. She is often left hungry. Whenever there is a party after the guests have eaten, only then is she given what is left, cold, rancid leftovers." Arthur was silent, his hand trembling. "Once," Rosa continued, "she waited until midnight just for a bowl of cold soup. She was still smiling. She called it a gift. She said her stomach was making music, and she had to feed it. It broke my heart, sir. But if I intervened, Mrs. Vanessa would find a way to fire me. I was afraid I would no longer be able to stay by her side and protect her. Arthur felt the room spin. He grabbed a chair. Sarah's face flashed in his mind, her frail hand in his. "Please protect Emily." "Sarah," Arthur whispered, the remorse overwhelming him. "How long has she lived like this?" "Since you remarried, sir." At first it was tolerable, but a few months later, everything changed. And the child. She endured it in silence. Arthur stood up, his eyes burning. "No, starting now, this ends." He went to Emily's room. She was asleep, her hand over her stomach, whispering in her dreams, "Eat fast, before the food runs away." His heart shattered. He kissed her forehead. "I'm sorry, my princess. From now on, I will never let anyone hurt you again." He sat there until midnight. Then he stood, took out his phone, and dialed a familiar number. A deep voice answered. "Arthur, it's late. What's wrong?" "I need the truth, Stephen," Arthur said, his voice dry but resolute. "I need to know everything that has been happening in this house." Stephen Ferrer, Arthur's old friend and trusted lawyer, paused. "All right. I'm on my way. Don't do anything rash. We will gather proof so no one can deny it." An hour later, Stephen arrived, tall, gray-haired, and carrying a heavy leather briefcase. In the study, he opened it and took out several small devices. "Hidden cameras," Stephen said. "I'll place them in the living room, the kitchen, and the main hall. Just give it a few days. You'll have your answer." Arthur stared at the tiny gadgets. "I will have her watch. I am no longer blind." "Arthur," Stephen cautioned, "you must be patient. The truth will be revealed." Late that night, a small red light blinked in a corner of the living room. The first camera was active. Arthur sat in his study, watching the live feed. The back door opened. Vanessa and Kyle entered, laughing, completely unaware that from that moment on, every gesture, every word, had a silent witness. Before we continue, please take a moment to leave a comment about this story and rate it from 1 to 10. How are you feeling? If there's anything you'd like to share, I'm always here to listen. I hope you find a moment of peace and reflection as you follow this healing story and its journey of courage and justice. In the dark study, the only light came from the laptop screen, casting a cold blue glow on Arthur Blackwood's face. He sat motionless, his hands clasped so tightly they ached. Stephen Ferrer sat beside him, his expression grim. The room was silent, save for the hum of the hard drive, a silent witness preparing to testify. "Are you ready for this, Arthur?" Stephen asked, his voice low. "Once you see it, you can't unsee it." Arthur just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "Play it." The video file opened. The first image was the living room, timestamped 2 days prior. The party was in full swing. Then, the feed cut to later that night. Vanessa. She stumbled into frame, her expensive dress hiked up, her makeup smeared. She was holding a plate piled with scraps. Her voice, no longer sweet and melodic, but a drunken, venomous slur, filled the study. "Eat it," she sneered, throwing the plate onto the marble floor. Food, grease, and sauce scattered everywhere. "Eat it like the dog you are. That's your share." Arthur's breath hitched. He made a choking sound, his hand flying to his mouth. Then, Emily. She appeared from the shadows of the hallway, a small, ghost-like figure in her dirty dress. She looked at the food on the floor. She hesitated, her small hands twisting the hem of her dress. Then she crawled. On her hands and knees, she moved to the pile of refuse. Her tiny hands picked up the scraps, one by one, bringing them to her mouth. Her small, fragile voice was caught perfectly by the hidden microphone. "I'll eat fast," she whispered to her Pikachu, which was clutched in one arm. "Eat fast, before the food runs away." A moment later, laughter erupted from off-screen. Kyle and Monica entered the frame. Kyle, lounging with a glass of Arthur's best whiskey, pointed. She's right. That girl lives better than a street mutt. What's she got to complain about? Monica shrieked with laughter, holding up her phone. Oh, this is priceless. A broken doll in $1 million castle. I have to record this. This is just too funny. The video file ended, plunging the room back into darkness. Arthur didn't just cry. He broke. A raw, ragged sob tore from his chest. A sound of such profound agony that it seemed to shake the very foundations of the room. He slumped forward, his face in his hands, his broad shoulders shaking. My God, what have I done? He wept, his voice cracking. I left her here. I did this. I let her live like this. My little girl, eat fast. He couldn't finish the sentence, the guilt suffocating him. Stephen placed a heavy, firm hand on his friend's shoulder. This is not your fault, Arthur. This is their evil. But now the truth is out. We have them. Now you can act. You are no longer in the dark. Arthur looked up, his face a mask of tears. But his eyes were no longer filled with guilt. They were burning with a cold, righteous fury. You're right, he said, his voice raspy. I'm not in the dark, and I'm going to bring them into the light. The next evening, Arthur was a changed man. He was calm. He was precise. He was an actor playing the part of the ignorant husband. He entered the dining room. Vanessa, Kyle, and Monica were already there, laughing and drinking, preparing for dinner. Emily stood in her usual spot, in the corner by the doorway, clutching her doll, her eyes on the floor. Emily. Arthur's voice was deep and warm, cutting through the laughter. Everyone froze. Emily looked up, her eyes wide with fear. Come sit here, Arthur said, pulling out the chair right next to his at the head of the table. With me, the girl's eyes widened. Daddy, I can sit at the table? This is your seat, he said gently. From now on, you will always sit here. As Emily scrambled into the chair, her small hands trembling on the expensive silverware, Vanessa quickly recovered, forcing a sweet, tinkling laugh. Darling, you're spoiling her. I just wanted her to learn some table manners, but she must be so happy her daddy is home. Arthur didn't even look at her. He placed a piece of roasted chicken, a large, perfect piece, onto his daughter's plate. The room was suffocatingly silent. Monica, swirling her wine, leaned back and broke the quiet. Well, this is a change. I still remember her on the floor last time. That was hilarious, wasn't it, V? Arthur's head snapped toward her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His eyes, cold as steel, locked onto hers. His voice was a low, dangerous whisper. Monica, be quiet. Her smile froze. Her hand trembled, wine sloshing over the rim of her glass. She looked away, her face pale. The rest of the dinner was eaten in a heavy, terrible silence, broken only by Arthur gently asking Emily if she wanted more potatoes. When the meal was over, Vanessa followed Arthur to his study. The tears came instantly, a performance worthy of an award. Arthur, how can you suspect me? How can you treat my friends that way? I have tried so hard to hold this family together. I love you. I care for her. I don't want tears, Arthur said, his voice flat as he looked out the window. I want the truth. If you don't trust me, she sobbed, then what's left? You're killing the trust between us. You're killing me. He watched her, his heart a block of ice. He saw the strings. He was done being a puppet. In the dark hallway, as Vanessa sobbed her way back to her room, Kyle grabbed her arm. He's not stupid anymore, he hissed, his shifty eyes darting around. That look he gave Monica. He knows something. He suspects, Vanessa hissed back, her tears vanishing instantly, replaced by a cold, calculating fury. But he has no proof. If he's going to doubt me, he needs a reason to trust me. What do you mean? He needs a villain, Vanessa whispered, a cruel smile touching her lips. He needs someone to blame. And if we don't act first, he'll blame us. We need to frame someone. Her eyes narrowed. That old woman, Mrs. Rosa, he trusts her. If he thinks she's the one betraying him, he'll come running back to me. The next morning, a piercing shriek echoed through the mansion. My jewelry! It's gone! Arthur ran upstairs. Vanessa was in the middle of their bedroom, her hair a wild mess, her hands clutching an empty velvet jewelry box. The diamond set, Arthur? The one you bought me in Paris. It's gone. We've been robbed. Kyle appeared, faking a yawn. What, jewelry missing? This is serious. It has to be an inside job. It must be the staff. Before Arthur could say a word, Kyle was already storming down the hall toward the servants' quarters. I'll check. I'll search her room. He burst into Mrs. Rose's small, tidy room. A few moments later, he emerged, his face a mask of triumph, holding the red velvet box. It's here, just as I thought. In her drawer. She's a thief! Vanessa collapsed into Arthur's arms, her sobs racking her body. Oh, Arthur, I trusted her. I treated her like family, and she betrayed us. How could she? Mrs. Rosa ran in, her face pale with terror. No, sir. I swear to God. I would never touch anything. She fell to her knees, weeping. Sir, please, you must believe me. Emily ran to her father, clinging to his hand, her own eyes wide with tears. Daddy, no. Rosa is not bad. Rosa is my friend. She gives me water. She's good, Daddy. She's good. Arthur stood frozen, the vortex of lies spinning around him. His wife, his daughter, his loyal housekeeper. For one terrible second, he was torn. Don't be so quick to condemn her, Arthur. Stephen Ferrer stood in the doorway. He was dressed in a sharp suit, holding his briefcase. Before you fire anyone, I think you need to see this. Vanessa's face went white. Kyle tensed, his eyes darting to the exit. What is this, Stephen? Arthur asked, his voice low. I pulled the footage from this morning, Stephen said, walking to the large television in the living room and plugging in a USB drive. I thought you'd want to see how the thief was caught so quickly. The screen lit up. The hidden camera in the upstairs hall. The timestamp was from 7 a.m., 2 hours before the discovery. It showed Kyle looking around furtively, sneaking into Arthur's bedroom. He emerged a moment later with the jewelry box. He then walked to Mrs. Rose's room, opened her drawer, and planted the box inside. The video was clear. Undeniable. No, Kyle shouted, his voice cracking. That's fake. It's edited. You're trying to frame me, Vanessa stammered, backing away. I don't know anything about this. He must have done it on his own. Mrs. Rosa broke down, weeping with relief. Emily ran and hugged the old woman. Daddy, don't let the good people go. Arthur felt the last piece of his blindness fall away, replaced by a white-hot rage. But Stephen held up a hand. We're not done, Stephen said, his voice booming in the silent room. You've seen the setup, now. I think everyone should see the crime. He clicked another file. Vanessa's eyes widened in terror. No! Arthur, don't... But it was too late. The video from the night before, the abuse video, filled the screen. Vanessa drunk. Eat it like the dog you are. Emily on the floor, crawling. Kyle and Monica laughing, recording. The room was utterly silent. Monica, who had been standing near the back, was now pale as a sheet. Vanessa was shaking, all pretense of tears gone, replaced by pure, venomous hatred. Arthur didn't look at them. He didn't need to. He simply took out his phone. His voice was cold, steady, and clear. Yes, I'd like to report a crime. My name is Arthur Blackwood. I am at my home. I'm reporting my wife, Vanessa Blackwood, and her brother Kyle for felony child abuse and conspiracy to commit theft. Vanessa lunged, her nails out, screaming, You're insane! You'll destroy my life for that. For a defective, broken child? Arthur didn't even flinch. He simply stepped aside as Stephen Ferrer blocked her path. When the police officers walked in, Vanessa and Kyle were still shouting, still denying. But when the officers snapped the handcuffs on, Vanessa's rage turned to ice. As they led her away, she turned, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was terrifying. You'll regret this, Arthur. You'll be alone forever. No woman will ever agree to raise that broken thing. You'll die alone! Her voice echoed as the heavy front door closed, leaving the house in a profound, deafening silence. Arthur turned, his face crumbling. He walked to his daughter, who was still clutching Mrs. Rosa, and knelt. He pulled them both into his arms, burying his face in Emily's hair. I will protect you, he choked out, his own tears finally falling, for the rest of my life. I promise. The healing was slow. It was not a movie. Arthur's guilt was a heavy weight. He took Emily to a child specialist, a kind woman named Dr. Laura. In their first session, Dr. Laura gave Emily crayons. Draw me your home, sweetie. Emily drew a small crooked house. Inside, there was a tiny figure of a girl and a very large figure of a man, and a Pikachu. That was it. Dr. Laura looked at Arthur. She doesn't need a castle, Mr. Blackwood. She doesn't need your presence. She needs your presence, so he stayed. He canceled his trips. He sold off the part of his company that required travel. He learned to cook. His first attempt was a burned, smoky mess that set off the fire alarms, and Emily, for the first time in a year, had laughed. A real belly laugh. A few months later, it was Emily's birthday. Arthur didn't throw a party. He, Mrs. Rosa, Stephen, and Dr. Laura gathered in the living room. Arthur carried in a cake. It was lopsided. The frosting was uneven, and the Pikachu he'd tried to draw in yellow icing looked more like a lumpy, terrified blob. Emily's eyes went wide. It's a Pikachu cake," she shrieked. "I'm the Pikachu princess." They sang happy birthday. As Arthur set the cake down, Emily looked around the table at the 4 smiling faces. She whispered, so quietly Arthur almost missed it. "I'm not eating alone." Arthur's heart broke and healed all at once. 3 years passed. The mansion, once cold, was now a home. The sound of parties was replaced by the sound of laughter. One afternoon, Emily, now 11, was on a new swing set in the backyard. Arthur was pushing her. "You're swinging me too high, Daddy." She laughed, her hair flying. "You can handle it," he laughed back. "You know, Daddy," Emily said, her voice thoughtful as the swing slowed. "My tummy doesn't roar from hunger anymore." Arthur froze. He gently stopped the swing and knelt in front of her. "Oh?" She smiled, a bright, pure smile that lit up her whole face. "No, now, it plays music, because it's happy." Arthur looked at his daughter, this resilient, beautiful, happy child, and pulled her into a hug. The man who had conquered the world had finally found his home, not in a mansion, but in the simple, perfect music of his daughter's happiness.